David Chandler thought he was the king of Chicago, treating his young mistress, Sarah, to a weekend of luxury at the five-star Serafina. He'd booked their most expensive suite, a bold move while his pregnant wife, Catherine, was at home. But from the moment he checked in, something felt wrong. The staff was too attentive, the suite too perfect. David was about to learn the difference between being a guest and being the owner's foolish husband. This is the story of a betrayal that shattered a life and revealed who held the real power. The click of the heavy, silver-plated lighter was the only sound that cut through the low hum of the aviary, a bar so dark and self-important it felt less like a room and more like a void. David Chandler snapped the flame shut, the orange briefly illuminating the sharp, expensive lines of his jaw. Across the minimalist steel table, Sarah Jenkins watched him, her eyes reflecting the pinprick city lights from the window behind him. "You seem stressed, David," Sarah murmured. She was young, barely 26, and still had that fresh-from-Wharton gloss. She was a junior analyst in his division at G&P Consulting, and she looked at him with an intoxicating blend of ambition and raw adoration that he hadn't seen at home in a very long time. "This quarter's projections are a nightmare," David lied, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. The whiskey was a 25-year-old Macallan. He'd made a point of ordering it by the bottle. "That, and, you know," he let the implication hang in the air. The baby. Catherine was 7 months pregnant. Their sprawling Lincoln Park brownstone, once a testament to their shared success, now felt like a high-end, softly carpeted prison. It was filling up with things he didn't understand. Bassinet models, diaper pails that cost more than his first car, and the soft, constant scent of lavender and nausea. Catherine herself, usually so sharp and present, had become distant. She was tired, her body changing, her focus turning inward. He resented it. He resented the intrusion, the biological hijacking of the woman he'd married. Catherine Hayes. When they met, she was a quiet, fiercely intelligent VP of acquisitions at a small real estate firm. He was the charming, aggressive rainmaker at G&P. He'd seen her as a smart, suitable match. Stable, classy. She kept her family's moderate wealth quiet, which he'd respected. It felt old money. Now he was suffocating. "She doesn't get the pressure you're under," Sarah offered, sliding her hand across the table. Her nails were a deep, predatory crimson. "You're building an empire. You deserve to be taken care of." David covered her hand with his. Her skin was warm, electric. This was what he was missing. The thrill, the risk, the validation. He felt powerful with Sarah. At home, he just felt like the guy who forgot to pick up the prenatal vitamins. "You get it, don't you, Jenks?" he said, using his office nickname for her. "You always do. I get that a man like you needs an escape," she said, her voice dropping. "A real one." "I've been thinking the same thing." He leaned in, the smell of her perfume, something sharp and floral, cutting through the whiskey. "This weekend, let's get out of the city. Not really, but, you know, a bubble." "A bubble," she repeated, her eyes brightening. "Like a hotel? David, we can't. What if someone sees?" "No one will see." He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the app for the Serafina. It was the newest, most obscenely luxurious hotel in the city. A night there cost what Sarah made in a week. It was a monolith of gleaming bronze and glass overlooking the river, a place where the staff was rumored to be telepathic, and the thread count was high enough to be its own currency. "I have a corporate account," he lied again. "They're trying to win G&P's business. We'll be ghosts. Presidential suite, room service, no one has to know." This was the real reason he'd been short-tempered. The planning, the logistics of the betrayal. He'd been maneuvering for this weekend for a month, ever since Catherine had her 3-hour baby shower, a pastel-colored hell from which he'd fled with a migraine. "David," Sarah breathed, her pupils wide. "The Serafina? I've only read about it." "Then it's time you saw it." He tapped the confirm button on the Founder's Suite, the most expensive option. A jolt of adrenaline shot through him, potent and pure. His card went through without a hitch. Of course it did. He was David Chandler. He was a partner. He thought of Catherine, probably asleep by now, a fortress of pillows around her bump. A quick, sharp spike of guilt pierced his excitement. He extinguished it with a gulp of whiskey. She didn't understand him. She didn't see him anymore. If she was going to check out of their marriage to prepare for motherhood, why should he be forced to sit alone in the dark? He was just taking what he was owed. "This weekend," he said, giving Sarah a smile that felt both predatory and boyish. "You, me, and the best view in Chicago. Pack your best." "I will," she whispered, leaning across the table to kiss him. Her lips were soft, hungry, and tasted like his escape. He paid the bill, an astronomical sum that made his stomach clench for half a second, and walked her out to her Uber. As she slid into the car, she gave him one last look, a promise of everything to come. He turned, adjusting the cuffs of his Zegna suit, and walked toward his own car. He felt the buzz of the whiskey and the thrill of the chase. He was David Chandler. He was in control. The weekend couldn't come fast enough. He was a king, and he was about to claim his castle, if only for 48 hours. Friday, 3:20 p.m. The black Mercedes sedan whispered to a halt on the heated cobblestone driveway of the Serafina. A doorman, dressed in a charcoal gray uniform that looked more like a bespoke suit, opened David's door before the car had even fully stopped. "Welcome to the Serafina, sir." David stepped out, adjusting his sunglasses. The air in the hotel's private porte-cochere was different. Hushed, scented with a faint, unidentifiable fragrance of white tea and bergamot. Sarah emerged from the other side, looking flushed and trying to appear casual in a new silk trench coat. "This place is quiet," she whispered, clutching her overnight bag. "It's called discretion, Sarah," David said, a little too loudly. He handed the valet his keys. "Chandler, checking in." He strode into the lobby, Sarah a half step behind. It was less a lobby and more a modern art gallery. Soaring 40-foot ceilings, walls of book-matched Calicut marble, and a single massive sculpture of suspended bronze leaves that seemed to float in the air. There was no check-in desk, only a series of private alcove-like pods, each manned by a single impeccably dressed concierge. David felt a surge of pride. This was a place worthy of him. He was performing for Sarah, but also for himself. He approached the nearest pod. The concierge, a striking woman with her hair in a severe chignon, looked up and smiled. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were intensely observant. "Good afternoon, sir. How may I assist you?" "David Chandler, checking in for the Founder's Suite." The woman's fingers didn't even tap the keyboard. She simply inclined her head, her smile widening just a fraction. "Of course, Mr. Chandler. We've been anticipating your arrival. It is a distinct pleasure to welcome you." "Mr. Chandler," another voice echoed. A man in a sharper suit, the general manager by his tailoring, was suddenly at his elbow. "Michael Chen, general manager. We are so honored to have you with us. Please, allow me to escort you directly to the suite. There's no need for formalities here." David felt a swell of self-importance. They must really want the G&P account. "Thank you, Michael. This is my associate, Sarah Jenkins." "Ms. Jenkins." Michael Chen gave her a brief, polite nod that was several degrees cooler than the one he'd given David. "Right this way. Your luggage will be brought up immediately." They were guided to a private elevator bank, operated by a keycard Chen held. The elevator was lined in soft, quilted leather. "The Founder's Suite is one of a kind," Chen explained as they ascended silently. It has a unique security protocol. Your key will be the only one active for the weekend, aside from my own master. Good, David said. Privacy is paramount. The doors opened directly into the suite. Or rather, the penthouse. It wasn't a room. It was an apartment. 1,000 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows offered a staggering 270-degree view of the Chicago River and the lake beyond. A grand piano sat in one corner. A fireplace, encased in smoked glass, was already lit. Wow, Sarah breathed, walking toward the window, her heels sinking into the plush silk rug. David, this is... wow. It's adequate, David said, trying to sound bored. Inside, his heart was hammering. This was beyond anything he'd imagined. On a massive, live-edge walnut table sat an extravagant welcome basket, but it wasn't the usual fruit and cheap champagne. This was a bottle of Armand de Brignac, a box of hand-painted chocolates, and a selection of rare cheeses. Next to it was a small, heavy stock envelope. We do hope you find everything to your liking, Mr. Chandler, Chen said. The minibar is, of course, entirely complimentary, as is all room service. Mrs., that is, the founder, insists on it for this particular suite. Thank you, Michael. That's very generous. Not at all. Is there anything else I can procure for you? Dinner reservations? Theater tickets? We'll be dining in, David said, already imagining the night ahead. Of course. Chen handed David a sleek, heavy keycard. Enjoy your stay, Mr. Chandler. Ms. Jenkins. He bowed slightly and left, the elevator doors closing with a whisper-quiet thud. The silence that followed was broken by Sarah's giddy laugh. David, this is insane. The founder insists. They're treating you like royalty. That G&P account must be massive. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him, long and deep. David kissed her back, his hand sliding down to the small of her back. I told you, he murmured against her lips. I'm a valuable guy. They know who I am. But as he held her, his eyes drifted to the welcome note on the table. He hadn't opened it. He felt a small, cold flicker of... something. Anxiety? He dismissed it. It was just the adrenaline. Let's open the champagne, Sarah said, already pulling at the foil. You read my mind. As she wrestled with the cork, David picked up the envelope. It was thick, creamy paper. His name was written on the front in elegant, familiar script. David, not Mr. Chandler? He pulled out the card. It was short. I'm glad you finally get to see it. I hope it's everything you imagined. Enjoy your stay. There was no signature. But he didn't need one. He knew that handwriting. He knew the precise, controlled loop of the D and the sharp, definitive cross of the T. He'd seen it every day for 6 years. On grocery lists, on birthday cards, on the notes section of their joint checking account. It was Catherine's. He dropped the card as if it had burned him. David, what is it? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sarah stood there, the champagne bottle in her hand, the cork still in. Nothing, he stammered, his blood turning to ice water. Nothing, just a work thing, a text. He shoved the card into his pocket. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence, a joke by one of the staff. Hayes was a common name. Catherine's firm was Hayes Acquisitions, a small-time real estate gig. It wasn't this. This was a billion-dollar empire. Well, forget work, Sarah said, pouting. She finally popped the cork. The thwack made him jump. Champagne foamed over the top. We're here to play. She poured 2 flutes and handed one to him. Her hand was steady. His was shaking. He looked out the window. The city lights were beginning to glitter in the twilight. The view was perfect. The suite was perfect. And he was suddenly, horribly, profoundly terrified. He was trapped, 40 floors up, in a cage he had just realized was not his. The Lincoln Park brownstone was quiet. save for the ticking of a ridiculously oversized regulator clock in the foyer. Catherine Hayes Chandler sat in the nursery, not in the expensive, cloud-like glider David had begrudgingly assembled, but on a simple wooden stool. The room was painted a soft, gender-neutral cream. It was ready. She rubbed her belly, a firm, prominent swell under her simple cashmere tunic. The baby kicked, a sharp, insistent jab just under her ribs. "I know," she whispered, her voice calm. "I know you feel it too." She wasn't looking at the crib. She was looking at a tablet screen resting on a stack of unopened baby books. The screen showed a simple, text-based notification from her personal security AI. Guest arrival, Mr. D. Chandler, party of 2. Location, Serafina Chi, Founder's Suite. Status, check-in complete. 15:02 CST. Catherine closed her eyes. The cold, methodical anger she'd been nursing for 3 weeks threatened to curdle into something else. A deep, profound, heartbreaking sorrow. She pushed it back down. Grief was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. Anger was a tool. She had built an empire, and she had done it by being smarter, quieter, and more ruthless than anyone expected. Her father had left her a modest inheritance and a single, failing motor lodge in rural Wisconsin. He was a kind man, but a terrible businessman. When she was 24, she'd liquidated her trust fund, not to travel the world, but to gut that lodge. She'd rebuilt it herself, sourced the linens, designed the website, and learned to balance the books at 3 a.m. From there, she'd built Hayes Hospitality. Not a chain, but a collection. The Serafina in Chicago, the Meridian in Vail, the Lighthouse at Big Sur. Each one a jewel box of quiet, bespoke luxury. She was the founder Michael Chen had referred to. She was the name on the letterhead, the invisible, all-powerful force behind the brand. She'd met David at a charity gala. He was loud, charming, and ambitious. He thought she was in real estate. She let him think it. She was so tired of men who saw her as a walking, talking bank vault or a direct competitor. David, with his surface-level charm and his G&P job, seemed normal. He was handsome. He made her laugh. He seemed for a time to genuinely love her. Catherine Hayes, the woman who liked bad sci-fi movies and burnt her toast. So she'd let him believe the lie of omission. She let him think his salary was the dominant one. She let him handle the finances, which meant she'd quietly transferred funds into their joint account every month to cover his extravagant spending on suits and whiskey, all while he bragged about his killer bonuses. She'd wanted a partner, not a parasite. She'd wanted to be loved for herself. The pregnancy had changed things. It was real, tangible. She'd decided, finally, to merge their lives completely, to tell him everything, to show him what she'd built, what they would one day give to their child. She'd started by giving him a supplementary card to her main account, the real one, the one linked to the Hayes Hospitality mainframe. She'd told him it was a new corporate perk she'd received. 2 days later, she'd overheard him on the phone with a friend from his old fraternity. "Yeah, she's huge," he'd said, laughing. "Total whale. I'm drowning in pastel. I swear to God, I need a vacation just from looking at her." That night, she'd activated the tracking on the card. It took him 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lunches at TIO, unexplained charges at Neiman Marcus, a woman's trench coat, and finally the big one, a reservation at the Serafina, her flagship, her home. He'd booked the Founder's Suite. The irony was so bitter it almost choked her. He was using her money to conduct his affair in her private suite. Her first instinct was to destroy him, call his firm, cancel his cards, throw his clothes onto the street. But that was messy. It was emotional. Instead, she'd called Michael Chen, her most trusted GM. "Michael, she'd said, her voice perfectly even. "My husband will be checking in on Friday. He'll be with a guest. They are to be given the founder's suite, as requested. I want you to extend them every courtesy. Everything is to be complimentary. I want him to feel like a king. Mrs. Hayes Chandler?" Michael's voice was laced with confusion. Yes, of course, but are you sure? He is to be treated as my personal guest. But you will refer to me as the founder or Mrs. Hayes Chandler, not Mrs. Chandler. I want to be very clear on that. And you will ensure that all his expenses, even the complimentary ones, are itemized and sent, personally, to me. I understand, Catherine. Good. Now, sitting in the nursery, she knew what she had to do. The trap was set. It wasn't a test he'd failed. It was a confirmation of her deepest, most devastating fear. He didn't just disrespect her. He didn't even see her. She pushed herself up from the stool, her joints aching. She looked at the tablet again. David and his guest had just ordered champagne. She picked up her phone and dialed her driver. "Robert, please have the car ready in 10 minutes. We're going to the Serafina." She walked to her own bedroom, bypassing the nursery and the life she'd imagined. She opened her closet, a vast, organized space that was all her own. She didn't choose a power suit. She chose a simple, elegant black maternity dress. She put on the pearls her father had given her. She would not face him as a CEO. She would not face him as a victim. She would face him as his wife, the mother of his child, and the woman who owned the walls that were, at this very moment, bearing witness to his betrayal. The storm had gathered. It was time to make landfall. The champagne was flowing. The initial, heart-stopping panic from the handwritten note had subsided, buried under 2 glasses of Armand de Brignac and Sarah's relentless, fawning attention. David had convinced himself he was crazy. It was a coincidence. Catherine's handwriting was generic. Founder was just a marketing term. He was fine. He was more than fine. He was sitting in a silk bathrobe, eating caviar from a mother-of-pearl spoon, while a beautiful woman laughed at his jokes. "This is the life, David," Sarah sighed, curling up on the massive velvet sofa. "I could get used to this. You, me, this view." "Don't get too used to it," he said, but his smile was smug. "This is a special occasion." "What's so special about it?" she asked, running a finger down his chest. "It's the first weekend of the rest of my life," he said, the words tasting like rebellion. "No more compromises. No more feeling like a background character." "To us," she said, raising her glass. "To the foreground." They'd planned to stay in the suite all night, but by 8 p.m., the opulence was making them restless. "I want to see this place," Sarah said, changing into a tight black cocktail dress. "I want people to see me here, with you." David's earlier anxiety was gone, replaced by a champagne-fueled arrogance. She was right. What was the point of being a king if you stayed hidden in the castle? "Get dressed," he said. "We're going to AER." AER was the hotel's rooftop bar and restaurant, an impossible-to-get-a-reservation venue that was all glass, fire pits, and influencers. When they stepped out of the private elevator, the place was packed, a throbbing mass of Chicago's elite. The hostess, however, spotted them instantly. "Mr. Chandler, of course, your table is ready." She didn't lead them to a small two-top. She led them to the corner table, a sprawling, semi-private cabana with its own fire pit, overlooking the entire glittering skyline. "This must be the best table in the house," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. "They know who I am," David repeated, the phrase becoming his mantra. A sommelier appeared instantly. "Mr. Chandler, an honor. May I recommend the 1982 Mistress? It's a particular favorite of the founder." David, who knew nothing about wine, just nodded. "Perfect. Bring it." He felt invincible. Every staff member who passed bowed their head. "Mr. Chandler." "Good evening, Mr. Chandler." Sarah was in heaven. She was taking subtle selfies, the skyline and David's profile in the background. "My friends are going to die," she whispered. "Let them." David was on his second glass of the Petrus, a wine so smooth it felt like velvet, when he saw Michael Chen, the GM, cutting a path toward them. "Ah, Mr. Chandler," Chen said, smiling warmly. "I'm so glad to see you enjoying AER. Is the Petrus to your liking?" "It's excellent, Michael, thank you. You're running a tight ship here. I'm very impressed. I'll be sure to pass that on to my people at G&P. "You're too kind, sir." Chen's eyes flickered, just for a nanosecond, to Sarah, then back to David. "I just came over to let you know that we've taken the liberty of handling the bill for your dinner this evening." "Oh well," David said, puffing out his chest. "That's really not next." "The founder insisted," Chen said, his smile unwavering. "Mrs. Hayes Chandler was very specific that you were to want for nothing during your stay." The name hit the air and shattered the bubble. David's entire body went cold. It wasn't a prickle of anxiety this time. It was a full-body plunge into an Arctic ocean. "Mrs. What?" he managed to say. Sarah, who had been admiring her newfound reflection in a bronze mirror, turned back. "What did he say?" "Mrs. Hayes Chandler," Chen repeated, his voice perfectly pleasant, as if he were discussing the weather. "Our owner. She's so pleased you were able to make it." Sarah's face, flushed with wine and excitement, went chalk white. "Hayes?" she whispered, her eyes darting to David. "As in, Catherine Hayes? Your wife, Catherine?" David couldn't breathe. He was looking at Chen, but the GM's polite mask was suddenly terrifying. It was the smile of a predator that knows its prey is already dead. I think there's a mistake," David stammered. "My wife, she's in real estate, small-time acquisitions." Chen's smile finally faltered. He looked at David with an expression of pure, unadulterated pity. It was a look that said, "You poor, stupid man." "Sir, Catherine Hayes Chandler is Hayes Hospitality. She built this hotel. She built all of them. This building, you're standing in her office, essentially." "No," David said. It was a plea. "No, you're lying." "David!" Sarah's voice was rising, cracking. "David, what is he talking about? You said you were the partner. You said she was manageable. You said—" "Shut up, Sarah!" David snapped, his panic turning to vicious, cornered animal rage. "Mr. Chandler," Chen said, his voice suddenly hard as steel, "I must ask you to lower your voice. We have other guests." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a confidential, lethal whisper. "Your wife, Mrs. Hayes Chandler, is on her way up. She asked me to ensure you were comfortable when she arrived." The blood drained from David's face. He looked at the wine, the food, the sweet, the staff, the fawning. It wasn't for him. It was a performance, a trap. Every Mr. Chandler from the staff wasn't a mark of respect. It was an accusation. He was a fool. He was a kept man who didn't even know he was kept. "I have to go," he said, standing up so quickly his chair screeched on the stone floor. We're leaving." "David, wait!" Sarah scrambled after him, grabbing his arm. "What is going on? You lied to me." "Get your hands off me!" he hissed, yanking his arm away. He didn't see the elevator doors open. He didn't see the woman who stepped out, flanked by two discreet, stone-faced security guards. He just heard the voice, calm, cold, and cutting through the entire rooftop din. "Going somewhere, David?" He froze. He turned slowly. Catherine was standing there, 7 months pregnant, her hands clasped over her belly, her face as serene and beautiful as a marble statue. She looked regal, and she was looking right through him. The rooftop, which seconds before had been a symphony of clinking glasses and sophisticated laughter, went silent. It wasn't an immediate hush, but a rolling wave of quiet as, one by one, patrons and staff turned to look. Catherine Hayes Chandler did not move. She simply stood, A fixed point of calm, devastating power, letting the scene play out. The two security men with her weren't in uniform. They wore the same sharp suits as the hotel management, but their broad shoulders and watchful eyes broadcast their purpose. Sarah Jenkins was the first to break. Her face, which had been contorted in confusion and anger, crumpled into something like terror. She looked from David's ashen, horrified expression to the pregnant, powerful woman standing by the elevator. "Oh my God!" Sarah whispered, taking an involuntary step back. Oh no!" David felt his legs go weak. He wanted to run, to bolt, but he was frozen. Catherine's eyes were locked on his. There was no rage in them. Not yet. There was just a vast, arctic disappointment. It was so much worse than screaming. "Catherine," he breathed. What are you doing here?" "A better question, David," she replied, her voice carrying easily on the cold night air, "is what are you doing here? In my suite, with my wine, and her." She finally, dismissively, glanced at Sarah. It was a predator's brief acknowledgement of irrelevant prey. Sarah, to her credit, tried to find a spine. He told me." "He told you what, Miss Jenkins?" Catherine asked, taking a single, measured step forward. The security men mirrored her. "That he was the power in the relationship? That I was just the tired, pregnant wife at home? Did he tell you he was a partner at G&P? He's not. He's a senior manager, a title he's only held, by the way, because my endowment fund happens to be one of G&P's largest clients." Every word was a perfectly placed shot, dismantling David's entire identity. That's not true," David sputtered, but the lie died in his throat. He'd always wondered why his promotion had come through so easily, why his difficult partners always seemed to back down. "David, you lied to me," Sarah hissed, turning on him. "You used me. You said this was your life." "Quiet," David snarled, his humiliation complete. "Yes, Ms. Jenkins. Be quiet," Catherine said, her voice dropping, and now the steel was evident. "You are an associate at a firm my family has business with. You are here, in my hotel, with my husband. As of this moment, your employment is on indefinite suspension pending a full review. I'd advise you to leave. Now." "You can't do that," Sarah cried. "I assure you I can." Catherine nodded to one of the security men. "Mark, please escort Ms. Jenkins to a taxi. Ensure she gets her things from the suite. Charge the cab to my account." The guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, this way." Sarah looked at David, her eyes pleading. "David, do something!" David couldn't meet her gaze. He was staring at the half-eaten, obscenely expensive meal on the table. He said nothing. With a sob of pure, undiluted humiliation, Sarah turned and let the guard lead her away. The rooftop was now utterly still. "Well," Catherine said into the silence, "that's one piece of business handled." She walked toward him, stopping on the other side of the table. She looked at the Mistress. 1982. An excellent year. My father's favorite. I see you spared no expense. "Cat, I can explain," David stammered. His mind was a white noise blank. What could he possibly say? "Can you?" she asked, her voice genuinely curious. "Can you explain this, David? Or was this just research for the G&P account?" I was stressed," he said, the excuse sounding pathetic even to his own ears. "The baby. You've been so distant. I don't know. You felt small," she finished for him. "You've always felt small. I was foolish enough to believe you loved me enough to get over it." She gestured to the chair. "Sit down, David. We're drawing a crowd." He collapsed into the chair. She remained standing, a queen addressing a failed courtier. "I built this, David," she said, gesturing to the skyline. "All of it. While you were, polishing your rainmaker pitch? I bought the land this hotel sits on when you were still a junior analyst, worried about the lease on your BMW. Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. It was the only question he had. Why? Because I wanted a husband, not a COO. I wanted someone to love me, Catherine Hayes, the woman who quotes Dune and can't cook, not Catherine Hayes Chandler, CEO of Hayes Hospitality. I wanted a partner, an equal. She placed a hand on her belly. Especially now. I thought this, she gestured to her pregnancy, would be ours. Something real, that we built together. She let out a short, bitter laugh. And the moment it got real, the moment I wasn't the perfect, attentive background wife, you ran. You ran right here, to my house, with my money, to sleep with your subordinate. Catherine, please. He tried to reach for her hand. She recoiled as if he were a snake. Don't touch me. The cold fury in her voice made him flinch. Michael, she called, not turning. The GM was at her side in an instant. Mrs. Hayes Chandler, my husband will be checking out, immediately. He'll be staying in the guest room of our former home tonight. His keys to the main house have been deactivated. Cat, no, please. You will pack a bag, David. You will go home, and you will wait for my lawyers to contact you on Monday. Our baby, he pleaded. The last card he had, Catherine's face, which had been marble, finally cracked. A single hot tear traced a path down her cheek, but her voice didn't waver. You don't get to use that word. You don't get to use her. You lost that right about... Oh, she checked her watch. 5 hours ago when you checked in. She turned away from him. Michael, have security escort Mr. Chandler out. He's no longer a guest. He's a liability. She walked to the elevator, her back straight, never once looking back. The doors opened, she stepped in, and she was gone. David sat there, alone at the best table in the city, surrounded by whispering strangers. He was the king of nothing. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a fool. A fraud. And he had just lost everything. The elevator ride down was a silent, suffocating descent. David was flanked by the 2 security guards. They didn't touch him, but their presence was a physical weight. Michael Chen stood in front of him, facing the door. When the doors opened to the lobby, it was, as before, hushed and empty. A single, packed overnight bag, his own, was waiting by the door. Sarah's was gone. Mr. Chandler, Chen said, turning. His face was no longer polite. It was blank, impassive. Your car is waiting. My cards, David stammered. My wallet is in your bag, sir. Though I should inform you that the hotel has been instructed to decline any charges to your personal accounts, as they are suspended. Suspended? She can't do that? She can, Chen replied, a flicker of contempt in his eyes. The accounts you use are subsidiaries of her primary business line. You are effectively an employee who has just been terminated. Good evening. Chen turned and walked away, disappearing into a private office. David was left alone with the guards, who gestured toward the exit. He picked up his bag, the weight of it feeling impossibly heavy. He walked out of the scented, climate-controlled air of the Serafina and into the cold, damp Chicago night. His Mercedes was there. The valet, the same one from hours before, handed him the key without a word, his expression carefully neutral. David got in. The leather and wood interior, which this morning had felt like his armor, now felt like a coffin. He drove, his hands on autopilot. He had no idea where to go. Home. She'd said the guest room. When he arrived at the Lincoln Park brownstone, his main key fob blinked red. Access denied. He used the old-fashioned physical key for the side door, the guest entrance. It clicked open. The house was dark, silent. The regulator clock in the foyer was the only sound. He walked into the kitchen. A single light was on. A note was on the counter, next to a pristine, separate key fob. Guest room, guest bath, kitchen. All other rooms are locked. My lawyer, Anna Ruiz, will be at your office at 9 a.m. Monday. Do not attempt to contact me. He tried the door to the main living room. Locked. He tried the door to the master staircase. Locked. He was a guest in his own home. He sank onto a kitchen stool, the same spot where he used to drink his morning coffee and complain about the market. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "You're a monster, David. You ruined my life. You lied. I'm ruined." He blocked the number. Another alert. His personal Amex. Declined. Another. His Chase Sapphire. Declined. She'd done it. She'd cut him off completely. In the span of 2 hours, he had gone from a high-flying partner to nothing. He let his head fall onto the cold quartz countertop. A racking, dry sob escaped him. It wasn't a sob of remorse. Not yet. It was a sob of pure, undiluted self-pity. She had set him up. She'd known. She'd let him walk right into it. She'd let him book the suite, let him order the wine, let him bring Sarah, all while she sat back and watched. She'd made him the star of his own execution. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He thought back, his mind racing, piecing together 6 years of a marriage he now realized he'd never understood. The way she'd shrugged off his big bonuses as nice. The way she'd never, ever asked him for money. The way she'd insisted on that ironclad prenup, which he'd assumed was to protect his future earnings. He'd signed it without even reading it, smug and patronizing, telling her it was cute that she wanted to protect her little real estate hobby. He was the hobby. He hated her. He hated her for her competence, for her quiet, effortless power. He hated her for making him feel small, for making him feel like a fraud. This whole affair, it wasn't even about Sarah. He could barely remember her face. It was about this. It was about feeling like a man, about taking something that wasn't given to him, and she'd known that too. He spent the weekend in that guest room. The silence of the house was deafening. He could hear, faintly, the movements of staff, a housekeeper, a cook, he presumed, in the main part of the house, but they never entered his wing. Meals appeared on a tray outside his door, like he was a prisoner. On Monday morning, he put on his last good suit and drove to his office at G&P. He felt like a dead man walking. He didn't even make it to his desk. Ana Ruiz, a woman who looked like she ate hostile takeovers for breakfast, was waiting for him in the lobby, along with the head of HR and a security guard. "Mr. Chandler," Ruiz said, not offering a hand, "you are terminated from G&P, effective immediately. Your presence here is a conflict of interest, given your actions against a primary client." "You're firing me?" "We are. You have 10 minutes to clear your personal effects. This," she said, tapping a thick envelope, "is your severance, which is contingent on your signature of this NDA. And this," she tapped a second, even thicker envelope, "is the initial divorce petition from Mrs. Hayes Chandler." He was escorted to his desk. His colleagues, the ones he'd laughed with and competed against, stared, then quickly looked away. He threw a few personal items, a photo of his parents, his favorite pen, a deal-closing trophy, into a cardboard box. 10 minutes later, he was on the street, standing on Wacker Drive in the morning rush hour, holding a box of his life. He was jobless. He was soon to be homeless. He was penniless. The rage was gone. The self-pity was gone. All that was left was a vast, hollow emptiness. He had flown too close to the sun, only to find out his wife didn't just own the sun. She'd built it, and she'd just turned it off. Weeks turned into a brutal, humbling month. David's life, once a seamless flow of luxury and privilege, became a series of daily humiliations. He'd been forced to move out of the brownstone and into a soulless, extended-stay hotel in the suburbs, paid for by a small, temporary allowance dictated by Catherine's lawyers. He'd tried to find work, but the moment his name was run, faces tightened. Conflict of interest. Not a good fit. Overqualified. The word was out. In the insular world of Chicago finance and development, Catherine Hayes Chandler was the house. and David Chandler had tried to burn it down. He was toxic. The man who had stared back at him from the mirror, sharp, confident, a king, was gone. In his place was a gaunt, tired-looking man with hollows under his eyes and a permanent tremor in his hand. He'd lost 15 pounds. He wasn't drinking. He couldn't afford to. He was just diminishing. The only thing that kept him going, the only thought that wasn't tainted with his own failure, was the baby. His baby. His daughter. He'd found out the sex from a stray piece of medical billing in the divorce papers. A girl. He realized, with a chilling clarity, that his affair, his arrogance, his entire pathetic performance hadn't just cost him his wife. It had cost him his child. Finally, the call came. A meeting. Not with lawyers, but with her. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a private conference room at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, where Catherine was a trustee. It was sterile, academic, and imposing. He arrived 30 minutes early, his one remaining suit feeling cheap and baggy. She arrived exactly on time. She was magnificent. 8 months pregnant now, she seemed to fill the room with a quiet, undeniable gravity. She was no longer the grieving wife from the rooftop. She was the CEO in full command. Her lawyer, Ana Ruiz, was with her. "David," Catherine said, her voice even. She did not sit. "Catherine." He stood, his hands clenching at his sides. "Ana has the final terms," she said, getting straight to it. "They are non-negotiable." Ana Ruiz slid a document across the polished table. "It's simple, Mr. Chandler. The prenuptial agreement is enforced in its entirety. You forfeit all claims to any and all assets, properties, and holdings of Mrs. Hayes Chandler. You will receive a one-time lump sum payment of $50,000, contingent on the return of all gifts valued over $5,000, including the Mercedes." David didn't even look at the paper. "I don't care about the money." Ana Ruiz raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Really? I don't," he insisted, his voice cracking. He looked at Catherine, only at Catherine. "I'll sign it. I'll sign all of it. I don't want the car. I don't want the money. I don't want any of it." "Then what do you want, David?" Catherine asked, her voice betraying the first flicker of emotion. "To waste more of my time?" "I want to be her father," he whispered. The room went silent. I know what I did," he said, the words spilling out, raw and unrehearsed. "It was rotten. It was cowardly. I was a child. A stupid, arrogant, weak child. I hated you because you were strong, and that's my sickness, not your fault." He took a step closer. Ana tensed, but Catherine held up a hand. "You are strong," he continued, tears now openly streaming down his face. He didn't wipe them. "You are incredible. What you built, what you are. And I was a parasite. I see that now. I threw it all away. I threw you away, and I have to live with that. I will live with that." He stopped, taking a ragged breath. "But she's innocent. She didn't do anything, and she's my daughter. Please, Catherine, don't take her away from me. You can have everything else. I'll sign anything. I'll disappear. Just let me see her. Let me try to be a father." This was the one thing Catherine hadn't prepared for. Her lawyers had prepped her for rage, for bargaining, for threats. They had not prepped her for total, unconditional surrender. She had wanted to destroy him, and she had. The man in front of her was utterly broken. The arrogant, charming shell was gone, and what was left was pathetic. And for the first time, honest. Her maternal instinct, the one he had so cruelly mocked, was at war with her justified rage. She wanted to protect her daughter from this weak, flawed man. But she also knew, with a sinking certainty, that her daughter would one day ask who her father was. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the ill-fitting suit, the hollow eyes, the desperate, genuine plea. Her own composure, so ironclad, finally broke. A single tear, the same one from the rooftop, escaped. She turned away, staring out the window at the university quad. "The terms," she said, her voice thick, "are as stated. The divorce will be finalized." David's shoulders slumped. "However," she continued, her back still to him, "the matter of paternity will be addressed separately, after the birth." He looked up, hope flickering. She turned back, her face a mask of resolve. "You will have no automatic rights. You will submit to a full psychiatric evaluation. You will complete 1 year of mandatory therapy with a doctor of my choosing. You will find a job, any job, and you will hold it. You will establish a new, stable life, entirely on your own." "Yes," he said, nodding. "Anything. Yes. And if," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "if, after 1 year, you have proven you are no longer a threat to yourself or to her, then we can discuss supervised visitation, not as a right, but as a privilege, one that I can revoke at any time." It was a crumb. It was less than a crumb. It was the hope of a crumb. It was everything. "Thank you," David whispered, his legs giving out. He gripped the table to hold himself up. "Thank you, Catherine." "Don't thank me," she said, her voice cold again. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for her, because she deserves, at the very least, the chance to know her father. God help her." She looked at Anna Ruiz. "It's done. Get his signature." Catherine Hayes Chandler walked out of the room, her hand resting on her belly, a woman who had won every battle, only to realize the war against her own heart was just beginning. 9 months later. The crisp October air of a Chicago autumn swept through Oz Park. The laughter of children mixed with the rustle of golden-brown leaves. Catherine was sitting on a bench, a deep purple merino wool coat wrapped around her. She looked different. Tired, yes, but the hard CEO sheen had softened. She was a mother. In the sleek, high-tech stroller beside her, her daughter Lily was asleep, bundled in a soft, cream-colored blanket. Life had settled into a new, complicated rhythm. The divorce was final. The brownstone was sold. Catherine now lived in a beautiful, light-filled penthouse, one she'd owned all along, at the Serafina. Her life was her work, and her daughter. She was at peace. Almost. A shadow fell over her. She looked up, her hand instinctively tightening on the stroller. It was David. She hadn't seen him in person since the meeting. He'd kept his end of the bargain. Her lawyers had confirmed it. He was in therapy twice a week. He lived in a small, one-bedroom apartment in Ukrainian village. And he had a job. "David," she said, her voice neutral. "Hello, Catherine." He looked better. And worse. He was no longer the hollowed-out ghost from the lawyer's office, but he was worlds away from the slick partner at G&P. He was wearing simple, dark jeans, a worn flannel shirt, and a sturdy work jacket. His hands were calloused. He worked, she knew, at a high-end custom woodworking shop. He made furniture. He wasn't gaunt, but he was lean, and his eyes were clear. He didn't look at her with desperation, or anger, or even self-pity. He just looked quiet. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, but there was no venom in it. "The agreement was for 1 year. I know, it's only been 9 months, he said, his voice rougher than she remembered. I'm not here to ask for anything. Not for visitation. I was in the neighborhood. I saw you." He kept his distance, staying a good 10 feet away. He was giving her space. "She's beautiful," he said, his gaze fixed on the stroller. She's asleep," Catherine said, her defenses rising automatically. "That's okay." He rocked on his heels, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked, for the first time since she'd met him, completely and totally awkward. The effortless, rehearsed charm was gone. This was just him. "I finished my evaluation," he said, looking at the trees. "Dr. Rama said she'd be sending the report to your lawyers." "I know, I read it." He nodded, bracing himself. "And?" Catherine paused. The report had been shocking. It had detailed a man with a crippling inferiority complex, a deep-seated terror of mediocrity passed down from a hyper-critical father. A man who had seen her, not as a person, but as a mirror reflecting his own inadequacies. "He is not a narcissist," the doctor had written. "He is, quite simply, a coward. But he is a coward who is, for the first time, learning to be brave." "It was thorough," Catherine said simply. David let out a small, humorless laugh. "Yeah, I bet." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. It was a small, smooth, beautifully carved wooden bird. It was made of 2 different types of wood, interlocking, the grain flowing perfectly. It was simple, elegant, and perfect. I made this," he said, holding it out. I'm not good at much, it turns us out. But I'm good with my hands. I made it for her." He took a step forward, placed it gently on the bench between them, and then immediately stepped back. It's just sanded. No oils, no stains. It's safe," he added quickly. "If she, chews on it." Catherine looked at the bird. It was warm to the touch, the wood so smooth it felt like stone. It was an object of patience, of care, something his old self could never have produced. She looked up at him. The power imbalance was gone. He had nothing. She had everything. He was no longer her parasite, and she was no longer his host. They were just 2 people, bound by a child sleeping nearby. He had broken her heart. He had betrayed her in the most humiliating way possible. And he was, as Dr. Ramis had said, a coward. But as she looked at the bird, and then at the man who had sanded his fingerprints away to make it, she saw the first tiny, flickering ember of the man he could be. It wasn't forgiveness. It would never be a reunion. But it was something. "Lily," she said. "What?" "Her name is Lily. You called her her. Her name is Lily." David's eyes welled up. He nodded, swallowing hard. "Lily, it's a beautiful name." Catherine pushed the stroller's brake, reached down, and tucked the small wooden bird into the blanket, near her daughter's sleeping hand. She stood up, pushing the stroller onto the path. David started to back away, to leave as promised. "David!" she called. He stopped, his back to her. "Why don't you walk with us?" she said. "For a little while." He turned slowly, his face a mask of disbelief. "Just to the end of the park," she clarified, her voice firm. "And you can tell me about the wood." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He fell into step beside her, a careful 3 feet away. Not a husband, not a partner, but just a man, walking in the shadow of redemption, next to his daughter and the woman he had wronged, taking the first terrifying step out of the dark. David's journey from arrogance to accountability wasn't a straight line, but a painful fall. And Catherine's path, from a betrayed wife to a powerful mother, shows that true strength isn't just about what you own, but what you have the grace to rebuild. Their story is far from over, but for the first time, it's real. What do you think? Can betrayal of this magnitude ever truly be redeemed, or is David's change just another manipulation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this story, please hit the like button, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more intense, emotional dramas.